oogenesis. So oogenesis is again formation of female gamete. Formation and maturation of ovum. So here that is very easy to remember. Here, please listen. See where this formation and maturation of ovum takes place in the ovary. So that is, if you just imagine, like I am carrying my fetus in my womb. So during the formation of gonads itself, many oogonia will be formed in the embryonic stage itself. So if I have given birth to my child, female child, after birth, no more oogonia can be formed. So only during the embryonic stage, so many oogonias are formed. Okay, so those are called as egg mother cells or oogonia. Okay, so they start division. Okay, see here, no more oogonia is formed after birth of female child. So this oogonia is getting converted into primary oocyte. Primary oocyte. So these primary oocytes enter prophase 1. That is meiosis 1. So first oogonia. Okay, so oogonia, and again this leads to primary oocyte, which will get which undergo meiosis 1, and it is getting arrested in prophase. It is getting arrested in prophase. Okay, so at the time of birth, they will be having primary oocyte, which is arrested with prophase 1. Okay, so again, what will happen? That is the child from birth till puberty. Okay, there are so many primary oocytes and many are getting degenerated. See here, that is each and every. Yeah, see at the time of puberty, each ovaries are having 60 to 80 only. So before that, 4 lakh primary oocytes are present. That is at the time of birth, the female child is having 4 lakh primary oocytes in their ovaries, and that is this primary oocyte, again it is getting surrounded by granulosa cells. So this primary oocyte is present, and that is surrounded by granulosa cells. So this is called as primary follicle. So from this primary follicle, and again what is developed from this, secondary follicle is developed and tertiary follicle is developed. So what is the difference between secondary and tertiary follicle? Again, these are also having inside primary oocyte only. So here oogonia will be having 2N and primary oocyte will be having 2N. So in primary follicles, what is present? Primary oocyte is present. So that is also having 2N. And again, secondary oocyte, what is the difference between these two, primary follicle and secondary follicle? And again, here more granulosa cells are getting surrounded. So to differentiate primary and secondary follicle, they named like that. That is the number of granulosa cells surrounding this primary oocyte varies in primary and secondary follicle. So please be clear, like primary follicle, secondary follicle, and tertiary follicle. These three are having inside primary oocyte, which is 2N in number. Got it? So what is happening means, from the time of birth to puberty, so many primary follicles are getting degraded. Okay, that is called as follicular atresia. And here, what is the difference between primary and secondary follicle? I told that is number of granulosa cells which surrounds the primary oocyte is varying. And then why we are naming again one more follicle, tertiary follicle? That is due to the formation of this antrum. That is, what do you mean by antrum? A fluid-filled cavity is formed. Fluid-filled cavity is formed. Okay, so that is the differentiation between primary, secondary, and tertiary follicle. Even though all three are having primary oocyte, They are named as primary, secondary, and tertiary follicle based on the structure. So in primary follicle, fewer granulocytes are surrounding primary oocyte. In secondary follicle, they are surrounded, that is primary oocytes are surrounded by so many granulocytes. Okay, see here, that is during the time of puberty, that is from birth to puberty, so many primary follicles are getting degenerated. So at the time of puberty, each ovary will be having these many primary follicles only. Okay, so every month from one primary follicle, so from this one primary follicle will be selected. One primary follicle will be selected and that will be converted into secondary, tertiary and Graafian follicle. Okay, yes. See, primary follicle which is having primary oocyte. Secondary follicle also having primary oocyte. That leads to tertiary follicle, that also having primary oocyte. So till this, I think it is clear. See here, this is antrum. See, this is antrum. Fluid-filled cavity is formed in tertiary follicle. Okay, so that is the differentiation. And again, what is Graafian follicle? What is Graafian follicle? So again, in this Graafian follicle, zona pellucida layer is formed. Here the meiosis is getting completed. Meiosis 1 is getting completed. So meiosis from here, primary oocyte, it completes. It is getting arrested in prophase 1. Prophase 1. Okay, completion is happening. Completion of meiosis 1 is happening. That leads to the production of secondary oocyte. Secondary oocyte plus polar body. So here, what is the nature of secondary oocyte? Haploid in nature. Okay, so this secondary oocyte is present in tertiary follicle. And again, this secondary oocyte, it starts meiosis 2. It starts meiosis 2 and it is getting arrested in metaphase 2. Metaphase 2. Got it? So inside the Graafian follicle, what is present? Secondary oocyte, which is getting arrested in metaphase 2. Okay, so what is ovulation? Again, release of this secondary oocyte. Release of this secondary oocyte from Graafian follicle is called as ovulation. So during ovulation, this secondary oocyte, which is getting arrested in the metaphase 2, will be released and fimbriae portion of the fallopian tube that will collect this secondary oocyte and the ciliated epithelium will help in the movement of this secondary oocyte from infundibulum region to ampulla. Can you imagine these events?
Ma'am, explain once again, ma'am.
Yeah. See here, that is before birth itself, all the oogonia will be formed. Inside the womb itself, all the oogonia will be formed. Okay, and again, after birth, there is no possibility of formation of oogonia in female. Okay, there are 4 lakh oogonia formed when the fetus is inside the mother's womb. Those oogonia, they are developing into primary oocyte. Okay, primary oocyte. How they are undergoing meiosis 1. They start meiosis 1. But they are getting arrested at prophase 1 itself. Starting phase itself, they are getting arrested. Okay, and again, this primary oocyte, which is present in the ovary, it is surrounded by granulosa cells. So, primary oocyte alone, we know. Along with that, granulosa cells are present. So, we are naming it as primary follicle. So what is primary follicle? Primary follicle is primary oocyte surrounded by granulosa cells. Got it? And again, so many primary follicles are present at the time of birth. Okay, so after birth, the number of primary follicles will be 4 lakhs per ovary. Okay, but from birth to puberty, so many oocytes are getting degenerated. So only at the time of puberty, how many primary follicles will be there? Only 60,000 to 80,000. Okay, so at the time of puberty, I will be having 60 to 80K primary follicles. So every month, one primary follicle will be selected. From that 60 to 80K primary follicles, one primary follicle will be selected, and that is differentiated into secondary follicle. Others will remain as primary follicle itself. There are so many primary follicles in the ovary. Okay, so after puberty, every month, one primary follicle will be selected and it is getting differentiated into secondary follicle. What is the difference between primary follicle and secondary follicle? Again, they are covered by more granulosa cells. So all other primary follicles will remain same. Only the selected primary follicle will be covered with more granulosa cells so that it is differentiated from other primary follicles, and we are naming that as secondary follicle. Okay, so what is this tertiary follicle again? So this tertiary follicle, again, it is having primary oocyte, but antrum is developed. Antrum is developed. Granulosa cells are present. But what is the difference between secondary follicle and tertiary follicle? This antrum is not present in secondary follicle, but that is present in the tertiary follicle. Okay, so this is happening during follicular phase of menstrual cycle. Okay, so from this tertiary follicle, again, yeah, see here, so many primary follicles are there. Okay, that is primary oocytes will be there, and that is covered by granulosa cells to form primary follicle. And that primary follicle is converted into secondary follicle and tertiary follicle. Okay, so again, tertiary follicle will be having antrum. Antrum is formed in tertiary follicle. So all these primary, secondary, and tertiary follicles are having primary oocyte. And again, this primary oocyte, which is getting arrested in prophase 1, okay, it is after formation of tertiary follicle, it is completing the meiosis 1. So we know that meiosis 1 is reductional division. So this primary oocyte, which is having diploid number of chromosomes, it is getting reduced to haploid number in secondary oocyte. Got it? So now this is called as Graafian follicle. In Graafian follicle, these changes are happening, and again, this is called as Graafian follicle. And the polar body is released. So what is the nature of this polar body? The size is very less, but it is the chromosome number is same. Secondary oocyte and polar body are having same chromosomal number, but they differ in cytoplasmic content. Question will be asked. And again, what is the fate of this polar body? It is uncertain. Whether it is getting divided or it is getting degraded, it is uncertain. Okay, yeah. So now inside the Graafian follicle, the meiosis 1 completed secondary oocyte, and again it starts meiosis 2 also in the Graafian follicle. So meiosis 2, again prophase. It completes prophase of meiosis 2. Next is metaphase. So this metaphase, that is alignment of chromosomes in the equatorial plane. So that process is getting completed in this secondary oocyte, and there it is getting arrested in the Graafian follicle. So this Graafian follicle is having secondary oocyte, which is arrested at metaphase 2. Graafian follicle is having secondary oocyte, which is getting arrested at metaphase 2. 2 means meiosis 2. Got it? Clear, dear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So now the Graafian follicle is waiting for ovulation. Okay, so at what day the ovulation will happen? That is after menstruation. This follicular phase is needed for the development of primary, secondary, tertiary, and Graafian follicle. This will take up to 13 days in the menstrual cycle, and 14th day the ovulation will happen. So what do you mean by ovulation again? See the release of ovum. Zona pellucida will be formed and release of ovum. So the released ovum, what is the nature of released ovum? That is secondary oocyte, which is arrested at metaphase 2. So this secondary oocyte, it is reaching the fallopian tube, and it is waiting there for fertilization. So the egg, which is waiting in the ampullary region, that is secondary oocyte, which is arrested at metaphase 2. Please be clear with this concept. Okay, so when the sperm is meeting this secondary oocyte, later during fertilization only, this meiosis 2 from metaphase to telophase, it is getting completed. During the time of fertilization, meiosis 2 is getting completed in the egg. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's it. See, it is unknown whether the first polar body divides further or degenerates. Divides or degenerates, it is uncertain. Okay, tertiary follicle further changes into mature follicle, which is called as Graafian follicle. So secondary oocyte forms a new membrane, which is called as zona pellucida for protection of secondary oocyte. So Graafian follicle now ruptures to release the secondary oocyte. So what is termed as ovum? Secondary oocyte, which is arrested at meiosis 2. Got it? So when this meiosis 2 will be completed, so M2 phase will be completed. Question definitely you can expect. Completed during fertilization. During fertilization. That is during the time of entry of sperm. Entry of sperm, this will complete.